Hey on legends, round 24 is here. We have 8 games of Draftstars to go through, and Eagles come up against the Panthers, and really it's a big worry game for the Eagles with all of their forward pack basically out, their starters anyway, and yeah, I really think that the Panthers is can dominate, and I've been telling you to pick Brian To'o of recent time, and he's still not super expensive, and I think that's great news. And on that right-hand side as well, they're playing Zach Hosking, and he got the 50 last week, and a 13-3, I think he's going to be very consistent and able to get a 40-plus just through his defensive and work ethic, and then giving some nice try assists to To'o there. So both of those guys still the top picks in this game, and I won't steer you anywhere else. For the halves, it's obviously Cleary up top, averaging 80 for the season so far. I think DC is going to have a little bit of a tough one this week. He got 50 last week, but I expect something similar. Hope it's more for my fantasy side, but unlikely at this point. And Jerome Luai just continues to dominate. I think it's really, you should be trying to get Luai and also Cleary into your side. If you're going to the forwards, Isaiah Yeo just continues to dominate at 71. I don't expect Olakwatu to get anywhere near that. Scott Sorensen, on the other hand, continues to get those mid-50s, and I think he can do that again. Liam Martin is one of those guys, as we know, that can get you a 50 pretty comfortably as well. If you're looking down below, I think guys like Sean Kepi at 10,700, he's going to have to play bigger minutes, so expect somewhere in that 30s this week for him. Mosley Otta is obviously going to be one of those guys to do solidly as well. He's just not getting the minutes at the moment, but Ben Trebojevic in the starting side, if you need a 9K guy, he is your man in this one. Let's go to Sharks and the Titans. So in this one, for the outside backs, we continue to tell you to select the Titans outside backs, and Jaden Campbell fits that bill, that's for sure. For the outside backs for the Sharkies, Jesse Raymond is your guy at this point. He's got plenty of scores in the 40s and could definitely get up to that 60 mark as well. Connor Tracy scored solidly last week at 28, but I don't think he's the answer here. So I definitely would be sticking with Jaden Campbell, Brian Kelly, and Jesse Raymond in this one here. Half hookers, Nico Hines, very expensive. I still think Randall will be able to score well, but I'm not expecting the 65 plus. I'm expecting probably about the 50 mark, which would still be very much worth it, but can you spend that money a little bit better elsewhere? Tanner Boyd at 53 last week. He, at that, probably, I would imagine they're going to score fairly similarly in this one there. And there's, no one else really to select. Trindle had a much better game, but still not the guy I'd be looking at. Cam McInnes, a solid one again last week with 56, but at 20,800, do you want more upside in a Fafita who, scored okay last week at 61, but I definitely think he's got more in him. So Fafita, definitely the boom or bust guy. Clark should still be able to play decent minutes, but I'm not expecting the world. Tino also has that boom potential there with a lot of 60s in the games before his last one before suspension, so he's going to have lots of energy in this one. Hopefully he's rested from any niggles he's got, and he could be a guy to do well. Wade Graham has just announced his retirement for the end of the season, so congrats to him on a great career, but 30-odd is what we're going to expect from him and his scoring here. And Jack Williams continues to get good minutes, and a lower one last week, but he definitely has that big potential as well. For the Broncos and the Eels, I'm expecting a Broncos win, so keep that in mind on this one. And obviously, Reece Walsh averaging 48 is really nice there. Katoni Staggs has been the one that stepped up over the last bunch of weeks, and I still think you can roll with him whilst he's in form. So get around Staggsy on that one. And then the halves hookers, I'd be avoiding Moses, to be honest with you. If Reynolds is back and he's fit and well, I think we're selecting him just a fair bit cheaper there, at three and a bit thousand cheaper. Joey Lussick, unlikely to play the full 80 this week. So we spoke about him last week as a really good option. But they do have Brendan Hands in the 17. So if he falls out of that top 17, then Joey would be the clear pick. But I still think he'll get 50-odd minutes and do solidly for his price. Payne Haas, we spoke about last week as being the boom guy, along with Carrigan, obviously, and they both dominated there. So not expecting another try for Carrigan, but both of those guys to score really well again. Unfortunately, lose Madison to the bench. So Bryce Cartwright continues to be the guy that you want to be looking at on that right-hand side. He comes up against Capewell rather than Carrigan. So, yeah, not as damaging, which is ideal. Flegler averaging 40, so he's definitely one to look at. Piku off the bench now, not super ideal for him. And then, Joe O gets to start. Andrew Davey gets to start as well. So I'm not sure minutes-wise what Davey's going to get, but both those guys someone to look at as well, based on how the final team ends up. Rabbitohs and the Dragons. So for our Bunnies, I think Latrell needs to be selected. They don't have Lomax this week, Dragons, so there's really no one I'd be looking at heavily for the Dragons, unless you're looking at Ravalawa, because we know he has that boom potential, but very unlikely that it happens again. It seems to have a good break between his big scores, at least a couple of weeks in between. So he's definitely one to look at in that squad. But otherwise, it's going to be the Johnston, Tass, Graham, and Latrell Mitchell show. So whatever you can split between those two guys, money-wise, would be a good selection there. For the halves hookers, we got Ben Hunt, who's been scoring the best out of all of them. It's probably where you want to go, to be honest with you. Walk has been pretty poor. Cook had a better game last week, a big one. Can he do it again? Potentially. They do need to win, so there's no chance he won't be playing 80. And then Jacob Little is a low 40s guy. So really, to be honest, it's going to be Damien Cook or Ben Hunt in that section. For the forwards there, Murray's been really, really good. What you want to be probably looking at, though, is Dan Russell again at 12,180. Had a big score last week of 59. So, yeah, lock him into your squad. Michael Molo has been solid. I think he'll get some bigger minutes like he did last week with the 41 with JDB out. So go there again. Shaq Mitchell, potentially bigger minutes, but we haven't seen that in recent time, unfortunately. So, yeah, looking between those first few that I mentioned is going to be the play. Tigers and Warriors. So in this one here, again, you want to be looking at very, very heavily at the Warriors, guys. They didn't play great last week, so I think this could be a bounce back to form. They still won, but this could be one where they really, really dominate. And Tane Tuapiki needs to be in your side at 9K as well. So it could be him. It could be Dallin, the two guys you want to be looking at. And Rocco Berry's been very consistent, apart from his 23 there. When I say consistent, I mean he's averaging well because he has that one big score. I take that back, that's for sure. But those first two guys I mentioned, the goes. Sean Johnson averaging 86. Just get him in your side. It's just be crazy not to. Wade Egan's the other guy to potentially look at. Lots of 40s in his game at the moment. Appy Coruscant, the boom or bust guy, if you're looking at that. Forwards, Adam Finnell-Blake, I think, is more of a chance of a try this week. Jackson Ford's been the guy that's been averaging very, very well, though. The low 40s is his floor, which you could maybe cop at 18,000, but has the 70 upside, which is great. Mitch Barnett's been solid. Twali's been doing well off the bench. And Stefano as well, surprisingly, has been, last few weeks has been great. So if you can get that out of him, that would be terrific. I'd probably be avoiding Murata Niukore, even though he's low in price at the moment. Just seems to have a few issues in his game discipline-wise, which is causing him sin bins and the like there. Roosters and Dolphins. So outside backs on this front, I still think Sasaka can do well along with Nikorima. So those are two guys from Dolphins that I'd potentially look at. And then you've got obviously Teddy in there averaging 49 along with Manu. So both those guys I think should be able to score well this week. It's not against a tough team. So definitely look at those two along with Suoli'i and also Daniel Tupou. Both could do well. Halves hookers, what you're looking at here is a bit of a dumpster fire, to be honest with you. It's not great across the board. Drew Hutchison got 40 last week, and he's starting again. So I think he probably needs to be in your side. And then from there, it's, do you think Brandon Smith's going to play big minutes? Do you think, Jeremy Marshall-King will do well again? Or will he stick with the score from last week? So definitely I'd be looking at Hutchison and might be going light and then heavy in the outside backs and also the forwards with a Nat Butcher that can get that 60 plus 70 score with the big tackles and also a try in there. Conor Lemuelu has that boom potential as well. And then Jared Wallace with his offloads just keeps going nuts. But a 36 for him with offloads not being as important as tackle breaks. Just remember that compared to fantasy. But Wong's going to be a guy. 12,600, made big tackles last week, and he's the guy. He gets to start again this week with Ian Butcher out, so slot him into your side as well. Last two here, Storm up against the Raiders, and Matt Timoko is the clear guy up top, obviously with Jordan Rapana. If you're looking at Raiders specifically, with Rapana back at the fullback position, where he does seem to score fairly well across the board. So Geordie at 14,000 is a good pick, and I think Marion Seve, like I've been speaking about, he had a 32 last week. That's going to be his low for the year, given they came up against the Panthers. So expect a 40 plus for him in this one. He's so cheap, so get those two in your side. Half hookers, I think, Munster, bit of a low one for him last week, and it was still a 47, so I'm expecting big this week from Munster and also Grant, so either one of those is going to work well. Jerome Hughes is back and named, but do be a little bit worried about him with his sickness that he was carrying, sickness from last week, and a little bit of an ankle injury as well, it seems like, so maybe not back to full health, but they do need him to get a good win after a bad loss last week. In the forwards, you've got Josh King averaging 54, which is nice. That's can you cop a 40 odd though, which is likely. Brad Trent Liero back to some of his better form after me owning him in fantasy back here. I'm not salty at all, I swear. And Eli Katoa still off the bench, so avoiding him at the moment. Cheaper guys, there's not much, to be honest with you there. Tipai Maroa actually had a solid game last week with his 37. So if he can get decent minutes again, which is probably likely with the way that they lined up last week, it's very much the same. So yeah, you might be able to get some interesting minutes, which is funny to see for Tepai. Knights and the Dogs in this one. So expecting a Knights win after they didn't play very well last week, but still got the chocolates. So Ponga again, 69, the average there. Great pickup along with Mazu, Gagai, and Dominic Young. Exactly the same as last week. Inari Tuala comes in at the cheap 9,000. Probably avoiding on that front. And then really it's just Kiraz and Averillo from the Dogs that you should be looking at if you want to get one of those guys in. Halves hookers, Phoenix Crossland, I'll just keep selecting him at the moment. Hastings is getting better scoring though, and he keeps getting cheaper. So 12-7, if you can't get Crossland, I think Hastings will do, that's for sure. Probably not super excited on the Dogs except for Toby Sexton. So that's where I'd be looking at with him, just at a couple thousand cheaper than Burton. And then in the forwards, finishing things off there with Frizzell, I think at 57, the average there. Fairly expensive, obviously, but if you can fit him in, that would be great. Adam Elliott, though, is starting to build up a little bit of form with 2 good scores on the trot now. And at 13.5, he's one of those guys you need to look at. And cheaper from there, Ryan Sutton is starting, but not excited with his minutes. They do have a fairly decent pack bench now as well, with Luke Thompson returning. Where is Luke Thompson? He's fairly expensive, isn't he? Yeah, he's gone off a lot of his scores from last year. So, not too much down below as well. So, it could be where, as we said, spending less in the half hookers and spending more in the forwards and in the outside backs. It's probably going to work well in this one for you. So good luck in Draftstars for round 24.